Welcome to episode 5 of the Leading Complexity video podcast. This is where we explore the art of leading organizations in today's complex, hyper-competitive landscape. In each episode, we will explore cutting-edge strategies with some of the foremost thinkers in leadership. Join us and discover how to make your organization thrive and lead in a constantly evolving world. My name is Tomas Björkholm, and with me I have Göthe.
So in this episode, we will listen to a very interesting conversation that we had with Woody Zuill. He's author, software programmer, speaker, and he originated the concept of mob programming. And today it's called software teaming. But first, Thomas, you had some reflections from our last episode where we talked about the interview with Bonita Roy.
Yes, there were. She was really interesting, and there are things really sticking in my head that I've been thinking of since then. And one of this is the difference between Ptolemy and his view of how the planets were moving around each other versus Copernicus. And the difference was that Ptolemy, he put the Earth in the middle, and he needed a very complicated formula to describe how the different planets were moving around the Earth, but then Copernicus made it much simpler just by putting the sun in the middle. And I'm thinking how this way of putting the wrong thing in the center is exactly what we do in a lot of organizations. And especially since I again happened to look into the Gallup report from 2022, saying that only 23% of the workforce are engaged, 59% are what they call quietly quitting, so they're not engaged, and 18% are even loudly quitting. That means they are actively disengaged. And I think this is horrible figures. And I'm thinking the way of reacting, if we put the wrong thing in the middle, like if we put the management in the middle, the leaders and the managers in the middle, that will be that the workforce, we hire the wrong people. So we need to put extra effort on hiring the right people. Then we think that we're not controlling them good enough. We're not following up. So we are adding a lot of extra things in this. But what if this is just putting the wrong thing in the center? Maybe we could put like the purpose of the company in the center. And then we consider and with the customers. And then we look at our organization and we say that, okay, we have a lot of people that are actually serving the customer and the purpose of the company. So we put them next. That is like the workforce. And then what about the managers and leaders and a lot of other people? What are they doing if they're not working directly with the customers and the purpose of the company? What should they be doing? And the obvious answer is, of course, that they should be supporting the people that are supporting the customers and the purpose of the company. And now suddenly everything makes sense. It's very simple, because this will make people more engaged, because they will be working directly with the customers and they will solving the problems. There will not be a resource that could just be moved around like the pieces of a chess. And I think that will be more engaging. And so maybe it's not about we are hiring the wrong people. Of course, that could happen. But I think the thing is that we are putting a lot of effort hiring the right people. But the problem is that they are giving them a really bad situation because we are putting the wrong thing in the center.
Yeah. And Bonita
Yes.
talks about the concept of releasing complexity, where she talks about how we build unnecessary complex situations in the company. So by having this kind of false assumptions of that we need to motivate people. So we need to have programs for motivation and encouragement and appreciation and things to make people motivated, rather than kind of putting, as you say, the purpose in the center and the people, enabling them to actually do valuable work and tapping into their existing motivation that they already have, that would release or remove kind of so much of the unnecessary complexity as well.
Yes, exactly. And now I start to understand what she's saying when she's saying like up to 90% of the work is actually made up by us. So, I mean, it's a horrible figure. I mean, putting 90% of the work is just because we are putting the wrong thing in the middle, in the center. So, really interesting. What about today?
Yes, so if you haven't listened to that episode with Bonita Roy, we really encourage you to do so. But today we're going to talk about Woody Zuill and the recent conversation we had with him.
You have met him, and I think you have some relation with him before.
Yes, so Woody is kind of a friend of Sweden. He's here quite often, actually. So you have opportunity to kind of book him or schedule him. So I've been to some meetups where he has been presenting. We've also been to the same conference talk where we have been talking at the conference together. So we have had some connections, and yeah, we have had him at Crisp before as well.
Yeah.
And Thomas, you also have some relation with him.
Yes, actually, I met him many years ago when I was at Spotify, and he was there presenting his idea about what then was called mob program, now software teaming. And so I took those ideas and I implemented them and was really surprised because some way it doesn't really make sense. Maybe we should start by explaining what software teaming is.
Well, Woody called it before mob programming, and it started off with pair programming. So you actually, when you're two people working at the same computer, collaborating in real time, and he realized that if you can scale that to actually having the whole team actually collaborating, working together at the same time. And I love his definition of collaboration, which is that more than one person working on the same problem at the same time in the same space. And the space can also be virtual. So it works perfectly well also for distributed teams. And
Absolutely.
also if often also only using one keyboard. But the thing of actually working together at the same time on the same problem, I think most teams don't do that, or most organizations don't do that.
Yeah, because it sounds a little weird. I mean, having like 8 people in the room and we only have one keyboard, and it doesn't make sense. It feels like it's not adding up. It should be much lower. But that was what surprised me, that actually we solved things faster. But very interesting. Now I would really want to see the interview instead.
Yes, so let's check our conversation with Woody, and then let's kind of explore it further. Hello, Woody. Great to have you in the program.
Thank you, Michael.
You have been written a lot of books and had talks and traveled the world, I know, around the concept of software teaming, also known as mob programming. And we're so happy to have you on the program. So you talked about it for years, but it's still relevant, isn't it? Why is it relevant today?
Oh, that's a really good point, because when I first started programming, I always worked alone. I was a solo programmer. And that went up until about 1998 or so. I heard about pair programming. And I learned how to do that, and I started working with 2 people. And then in that same year, 1999, I got a job at a place where I was put on a team, and we never did anything at all like a team. We worked alone, even though we were on a team. So I thought, why did we call that a team? And I started investigating the idea of working as a team. I'd done many other kinds of work in my life where we worked much more collaboratively. And I thought, why do we not work collaboratively with software? And this was the beginning, again, that's over 20 years ago, of me investigating this and trying different ways to work as a team. So it's more relevant now, maybe even than then, because our problems are bigger. So most of the work that we do in the world that requires what I would consider knowledge work requires collaboration. There's very little work that's done alone. So when we started working this way full time at Hunter Industries in 2011, we were just naturally trying to increase our ability to collaborate. We didn't know we were starting something other people would be interested in. But as it grew, it just became more and more relevant to us that working as a team is critical. I have a book, I don't know if you're going to be able to show this, but I have a book on my shelf called Teaming. Oops, there we go, by Amy Edmondson. That book came out in 2012. And in this book, she talks about why it is so important to work as a team in our modern workplace. So I think it's probably more relevant now than it has been in the past because our problems are bigger.
Yes, most people just talk about teams, but they actually are not real teams. They're more groups or individual contributors, maybe cooperating, but not real teamwork.
That's a good point, and it's a good way to use that word. So they might have meetings to discuss what they're going to do, but then they go and work alone to do their work. And although some work has to be done that way, much of our work is done better as a group. Matter of fact, I'm reading some research right now that claims that we can hold focus on things longer when we're working together than when we're working alone. That we can be focused better for longer when we're working as a team. If that's true, that's maybe part of the reason why this seems to be such a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, if I look back my career when coaching organizations and teams, the best teams I've seen have been people from all kind of disciplines coming together, solving complex problems. But still, it's not really known or widely spread, even though you've done your part to
No.
kind of promote it. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, with computers, uh, we are given a keyboard and a screen, and that's sort of a personal workspace. When we're sitting down at that computer, it's just not natural to share that work. To do pair programming, which became popular 25 years ago, it became clear that actually you can. Let's find a way to make that comfortable. But I think that the computers we have, particularly a laptop, is pretty much a solo tool. So we aren't going to work together if our tools don't make it easy for us to do that. And there's probably many other reasons. Some of us prefer to sit alone and work alone. And maybe I'll emphasize this. I love programming alone. I love that. I love doing puzzles alone, like a crossword puzzle or, a numbers puzzle or whatever. So there's a lot of things we like to do alone. And that maybe taints our thinking a little bit to think that we have to work alone. But I don't think we have to. I think that we can learn to work better with others than we can work alone.
Yes, and there's so many objections to working together at the same time.
Yeah.
And yes, so how do you typically respond to that?
So there are a number of reasons not to work together. And so some of them are meaningful and some of them aren't. One common statement I hear is something like this: we can't really do software teaming or mob programming because we have too much work to get done. So we have to separate everybody so we have many things being worked on at the same time. So to me, that's full of assumptions. The idea that we have so much work to get done, we have to split the work up. But the assumption is we will get more done faster if we split the work up. But probably in reality, that's not true. My experience is it's not true. That if we put all of our force on one thing, we can get it done quickly and move to another thing and get it done quickly. When we separate people, we're actually introducing two big problems, two big wastes. One of them is queuing, and the other one is inventory. So queuing is waiting. So if I'm waiting, let's say I'm working on something, I have to talk to someone else. They're busy. I send them an email. Now I'm waiting to get the answer. So that's a queue, and that's wasteful. The other thing is inventory. While I'm waiting, I'm going to work on something else. I've introduced inventory into my process. I have now 2 things I have to pay attention to, and 2 things are going to be in the middle of not getting done. So these problems, that's one of the objections I often hear. Somebody will say something like, I don't want to pay 5 people to do the work of one, or I don't want to have it's 5 people watching one person working. These are assumptions. They think it's one way when it's actually a different way.
And I recognize it so much, and I think that's why many organizations are complaining about poor meetings and meeting culture, because if you want to solve something complex, you basically cannot do it yourself, and then you create this snowballing effect of waiting and queuing and creating inventory.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I had this experience with a team where we were assigned something extremely important to get done. So as soon as we started on it, we found we were blocked on something because there was a person who we needed to get an answer from somebody and they weren't available. So I went to the head person in the company. It was a pretty big place, but I knew the head guy and I said, look, this is really critical that we get done. Could you send an email out that if we approach somebody for help, we need that help right now because we need to get this done right now. And they did that. By the end of the day, we had 17 people all working together on this one problem. Because every time we found we were blocked, we'd find somebody who could get us unblocked and they'd come and work with us. We calculated after this was done that if we had worked in a more typical manner, it would have taken us weeks to get this work done that only took us 2 days to get done, because we removed the queuing, we removed the inventory, no waiting, everything just flowed from start to finish, from beginning to end, without any interruption.
Yeah, yeah. So this is so intriguing, and I'm really looking forward to have you in the program the 29th of October in our leading complexity program this fall. So see you then, and so many thanks, Woody.
Thank you.
Okay, very interesting. Some parts that he mentioned that might need some more explanation, like he said that he has never actually worked as a team. What does it mean with that?
I think it was kind of telling that when he had this experience of working and people were calling it a team, but actually people were working more individually. And this is, I can relate so much to it, that in workplaces, people say, this is the team, or you're a team, go and work. But you haven't really thought about what is a team, what does it mean to be a team, and what is it really collaborating or not, or are you just kind of synchronizing or coordinating work rather than actually working together? So they might, he says they might meet to talk about the work, but not actually do the work. So I think that is so common.
Yeah. So collaboration and teaming seems to be very important. Any thoughts of that?
Yeah, I think there is this also book by Amy Edmondson about teaming, which she talks about it as a verb, which means that teaming is working together, doing the work together. So it's not a thing like that we often think about it, that like we are a team, unless we actually do work together.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be enough to just, get together, discuss the problem, and then go off and do your work, and wait until the next time you get together? Wouldn't that be also a kind of teaming?
Well, I think he talks about, we asked him, like, why is it relevant now? And it basically says it's more relevant because we have bigger problems and we have more complexity, right? So there's not one person with all the answers, which means that you cannot actually deliver customer value by yourself. You can rarely do that. You need to have multiple perspectives coming together, working together to solve and be creative. So if we are not able to solve the thing, then we are, if not as a team, then we'll hand it over to someone else. And that other person is probably quite busy as well, which means that the thing will be waiting. There will be task switching, there will be loss of competence, there will be a lot of waiting time or queuing, as we talk about, and that will cause also inventory. Things will be piled up, waiting for things to be worked on. So this creates a really, really slow kind of snowballing effect in organizations, rather than having a focus on flow and getting things actually completed.
When you mention it, I'm thinking of something that happened like half a year ago in the winter. There was a traffic chaos, totally caused by some trucks that had bad tires, and a lot of cars got stuck. It was snowing heavily, and they were stuck like at least a day, some of them even more than that. And I'm just thinking that must be a horrible situation, sitting with your family, small kids, whatever, and you can't do anything. You can't get further, or you can't get back and anything. And I think the interesting is also both that nothing was happening, no one was doing anything about it really for quite a long time, and but also the reactions that were coming. First reactions were like, oh, we have to be stricter about those trucks. They have to have better tires. But I think, okay, so you fine them, but that wouldn't help. I mean, that is just money. It would not solve the problem. And you can't. And then they were saying that if you have bad trucks, you were not allowed to be on the roads when it's bad weather. I mean, you can't have police stopping them everywhere. So it's just adding a lot of extra work. It took actually a couple of months before I heard the first really good reaction that I thought that actually would fix the problem. And that was when, of course, it was someone working with it, not being a manager of any of the departments that were responsible. He was saying that if we just could get the right people in the room and take the decision together about how to solve the problem, we could have cut the wires that was in between the different lanes. So the cars could just get off, and we could have done that after a couple of minutes or hours when we understood the situation. And everyone was like, oh, getting the right people in the same room. How interesting. Before they were just, you know, blaming each other, and they said, no, we can't take that decision. Many of them were thinking about cutting the wires to open up for the cars to go away on the other side of the road. I mean, stopping the traffic on that side of the road, and that cutting the wires so you can use that part of the road. But they felt like, oh, we can't take this decision. It's someone else's decision to take.
I remember the blame, different authorities was blaming each other. The police, no, there's no crime, that we will not do anything, and the authorities for the road infrastructure said, no, that is not our problem. It's the kind of the people that plowing the roads or something.
Yeah.
So they were pointing to each other.
Exactly. So I think the right situation here, or the solution here, would have been to just, who are the people that can make the decision, and who are the people that have the skill of doing the work, and who are the people that have most insight of the problem. Get them in the same room and just say, we need to solve this, and we need to solve it quickly. We have a lot of people out there, they are sitting with their families, stuck in their cars, they can't get out, they can't do anything. How can we solve that problem? And don't talk about who's supposed to or anything like that. Just do it together. And I think that is part of the teaming idea.
Yeah. And I think that is what Woody was mentioning in the interview, where he mentioned at the company where he was working, they had a critical problem. He got the CEO to kind of raise the priority and assign the necessary people and skills. And he said that eventually there were 17 people. They solved it in 2 days. Normally it would have taken weeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when I ask clients about what's the best kind of team experience, very often it's a task force that people mention. And some people mention it like so passionately, and they will never forget the experience. recently I had someone mention that during COVID, they had in the company, they had different departments. Before they were arguing about budgets, kind of competing, not collaborating. Then COVID hit, they put the task force together. They had a clear goal. They collaborated. They worked together, solved it. And there was a huge positive experience. And the person kind of was so passionate that she will never forget the experience. But the sad thing is that companies have those task forces. They do actual real collaboration. They are teaming. And then when the problem is solved, they just dissolve the team and go back to working in the line in silos, sending work in between them, causing this kind of slow and delays in queues.
Yeah. I'm thinking, isn't this very much like in a movie where they're using this thing with people having different knowledge but not being together?
Yeah.
So you as a watcher, you can you see from different scenes that, oh, they have this information, they have that information, but since they're not meeting, they're not getting together, you get this tension kind of.
I think the tension and conflict, what I've understood is that those are key ingredients for creating good storytelling. So how do you maximize tension and conflict? And
Yeah.
that is working in silos. So that's a
I
good
mean, in the
example.
best movies, you actually get a little frustrated, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, there's no good story. Okay,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
in organizations then, if you want to create drama in organizations, we should work in silos.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone has too little information to really do anything.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of company leaders should be writing movies instead.
But
This also, yeah, sorry.
I'm thinking of a kind of a counter example of a good example. We had just Do Justice, also that we did an interview before with. So we probably will make an episode about his session on Tesla and SpaceX. And he kind of said that the one key thing for that Tesla can have that speed and innovation is that they're working with teaming. They don't call it that, but that was his experience. There was not like individual work basically at all. People come together, so you have people working on the machinery, on the design, on the production, on the automation, on the testing, all together. So they in the factory area they come together to kind of bring all the aspects together at the same time.
Yeah. And that reminds me about this feeling sometimes you have when you're sitting with the right people in the room, and you can take decisions and everything is simple. And then when you leave that meeting and then you come up with this, we should have talked about that as well. And suddenly how hard that is. It's not easy anymore because you have to run around, talk to each other, but everyone is kind of missing some part of the information. So yeah, interesting. But it feels like there is a lot of resistance to teaming. Any ideas of why that could be?
Yeah, I think I asked Woody about it, and he basically there was all these kind of false assumptions that manager will say, "I didn't hire 5 people to do the work of one," for example. But yeah, I think he often says that what's the proof of working in silos is more effective than working together? Like people assume it's more efficient when you're focused and I'm sure you feel productive, you feel that you've done a lot of things yourselves, but how often do you actually deliver customer value yourself? I'm sure it's valid, and if it's not that complex work you could deliver things, but the end customer outcomes is created often by teams. And to do that then, it feels maybe counterintuitive, but actually working together on the most priority thing and creating value out of that is more effective than actually working in silos.
Yeah, and I think another problem is that, again, we don't see the system. We continue working with exactly the same organization as we had before, and the same ideas of the differentiation between the thinkers and doers, and managers and workers. And so we have those silo teams. They are working on components, or they could be skill teams. So they have the same skill, and then it's like, wow, software teaming sounds like very interesting. Let's do that. But then you have kind of the same skills getting together, and then it doesn't make so much sense. Uh, I mean, then maybe enough could be to just be pair programming, because you can. The advantage of that is, of course, you immediately have two people looking at the work. You can quickly see that the other one is maybe doing something wrong that they don't see, and you can be discussing and so on. But it doesn't make sense to scale up that to software teaming, where we talk about a lot more people. That makes sense first when we have different skills, different, like, we make sure that we have the people that can make both have understanding of the problem, have the skills to do anything about it, but also have the authority to make the decisions.
Yeah, and I think one key thing you mentioned there, you don't see the system. I think that is such an important part. Because yeah, Woody said too, I love programming myself. I also love to be working by myself. It feels very productive because I'm in control. I know my situation, but I don't see others, and I actually don't see how value is created. I am thinking also this is similar to this bias of the false attribution error. So, like, if you are late to something, you have circumstances because you see the situation, right? But if someone else comes late, you are attributed to their character, or that they are just lazy or whatever. You don't see their situation, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's really easy for yourself to kind of rationalize that, yeah, I will work more efficiently. I will do my thing when I can focus by myself, not getting disturbed. But am I actually working on the right thing? Am I taking in all the perspectives? If it's complex, probably not. You might be going in the wrong direction, or you have to be integrated or something. So yeah, for sure, there are some things that better be done isolated alone, but complex things, yeah, you need the multiple perspectives collaborating, integrating, innovating.
Yeah. So we are back to this resource efficiency versus flow efficiency. We believe that we are very efficient when we are working alone, undisturbed, as you say. But if you zoom out and you see the system, then you understand that actually we are quite inefficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So often when we go into organization, we do this kind of analysis, this value stream analysis. And almost always you can see that like 80% of the time is waiting times.
Mm.
And I remember
Wow.
one time there was this group that were going to do some research or study, and they estimated it to be like 3 months. So, but what is the actual work time this will take? If you had all the competences that you needed available at the same time, and they say like, oh, they will go so much faster. It will take 2 weeks, maybe they say. That would be so much if we only had. But even then, that's kind of not. People cannot really think about how effective it will be. So if I tell them, okay, yeah, but if you had all the people and you locked them in the room and you didn't let them out until they kind of completed the work, how long will it take then? And then I said, oh, then it will only take 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
So people cannot imagine how it would be to have all the people working at the same time on the same problem in the same space at the same time, because they haven't experienced it. So rather they assume that, oh, it will take a few months, or if we have actually really lucky to get the right people, could go down to weeks. But when you think about it, maybe you have the potential is 5 to 10 times the speed easily.
That would be very nice for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I think the problem is that a lot of people see software teaming as a concept, a way of working, instead of seeing it as a more on a higher level, like a principle, a way of thinking rather. So, well, maybe it's time to get some conclusions. First of all, we have seen this working, so it's absolutely a good idea with teaming. And secondly, yes, we understand that there is a lot of false assumptions or resistance against this based on false assumptions. But in a world where we are have much higher complexity, we have more competitiveness, we need to be quick to respond to changes to stay out of being irrelevant. We think it makes sense.
Yeah, so I've seen it so many times. This is kind of so effective, and I think now as complexity is increasing, competition is increasing, and now more and more kind of examples of teaming is spreading. Now is the time, kind of, hopefully the kind of the time where it shifts.
Let's wrap up for today. We are curious about your reflections, so please share your comments. And if you want to learn more from Woody Zuill, you might interact with him in his masterclass, Software Teaming, Addressing Complexity with Genuine Collaboration. It's October 29th. Go to leadingcomplexity.com and get your tickets. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, everyone, and see you next week in our next episode.